Hello, beautiful people. Today is 26th of May. My name is Sahil, and welcome to Newspaper Analysis. Friends, today we will see a quote from Rabindranath Tagore, the great philosopher, poet, teacher, reformer who needs no introduction. Tagore says, neither the colorless vagueness of cosmopolitanism nor the fierce self idolatry of nation worship is the goal of human history. Now, why we are reading this quote today? Friends, into the present context, there are two opposing ideologies. On one hand, India is starting the Atmanirbharta Abhiyan, which is a kind of an anti-globalization ethos. Whereas on other side, there are the people who say that globalization has become irreversible. There is no remedy to undo the globalization. So, two opposing ideologies are there, and the answer is where. So, in this particular context, Rabindranath Tagore suggests a balancing act that we need to stay in between. Neither the hyper globalization nor the extreme self reliance is the remedy into for the human future. So, friends, highly relevant topic for this year essay. Please think on this particular line. Secondly, there has been clearly mention of globalization in geos paper number 1, so there also it can be used. Friends, before starting, if you like our video, then please do hit the like button, please subscribe to our channel, and if you have any suggestion, please feel free to post them into your comments. And now let's begin with today's analysis. This is the page number 1 of the Hindu newspaper, and the first news article relates to the opening up of air travel in India. Now, though large number of flights have operated, but there were certain challenges. Number 1, states such as Telangana, Tamil Nadu and Maharashtra limited the number of flights that can operate into their states. Therefore, large number of flights were cancelled. And these states have the most busiest airports. Maharashtra has Mumbai, Telangana has Hyderabad, and Tamil Nadu has Chennai. So, therefore, certain problems were there. Secondly, there were certain states such as West Bengal, Andhra Pradesh, who decided that they will reopen their airports after a couple of days. So, their flights were also impacted. Moreover, though flights were operating after a gap of 2 months and there were large number of stranded people, but still the flights operated at 25 to 50% of capacity. It shows that people are still reluctant in the flying. So this is all, and into the side if we can see, then the testing capabilities have been ramped up into various states because there is huge influx of the returning migrants. And here you can see that the color coding has been given to the states onto the number or basis of the tests that are being conducted. So in this particular direction, two states such as Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu, they are doing the large number of tests, whereas other states are doing moderate number of tests only. Now testing is being carried by both public labs as well as private labs, and into the public labs ICMR has ramped up the capabilities and have increased the number of labs into the states where the migrants will be inflowing. Moreover, with respect to the testing equipments, indigenous kits, swab collection aids, etc., are also being used. So, this is the general update, and now we'll be going into the deeper news analysis. Now, here below on the page number 1, there is an issue with respect to the ongoing tensions onto the LAC. Now, first of all, into the earlier videos, we have seen that there has been flare up into the India and China because of the boundary dispute. Now, guys, we have seen that the boundary of India and China has been divided in three parts. First of all is the western sector, then there is the middle sector, and then there is eastern sector. Now, first of all, technically speaking, line of actual control is the boundary into the northern sector. But very generalistically and often, LAC is also used for the entire boundary of India and China. However, this particular region here, the boundary is called as McMahon line. Now, guys, there have been two standoffs into the recent time. First one was in Sikkim and the other one was in Ladakh. Now, the recent dispute in Ladakh erupted due to the Daulat Beg Oldi road. Now, guys, Daulat Beg Oldi lies into the vicinity of Aksai Chin, which is right now under the control of China but has been claimed by the India. Now, here Daulat Beg Oldi is there. Then, this road passes from Murgo. then there is Shyok, then there is Darbuk, and here is Leh. So this road is very much strategic because here from here India keeps an eye onto the Chinese movement into the region, and here patrol by the Indian troops is also being carried. Now guys, into the present news article, one new issue has been erupted. Now again we will go to the map. See, here this particular region is Shyok. Now here this one is the Pangong So Lake, and over the Pangong So Lake there is this particular region which is called as Galwan. Now the name Galwan comes from the Galwan Nala, that is a small stream. Now guys, into this particular region there is also a post which is called as Galwan Post. Now when the Daulat Beg Oldie road it goes, one particular road also branches towards the Galwan Post and Galwan Nala area. And this particular region was being patrolled by the Indian troops. Now, Chinese troops are also showing their objection to the Galwan Nala region, and 2 3 points have been turning as a source of friction into this entire region. Moreover, apart from the Galwan Nala region, a small green hill over the Pangongso Lake here is also being intercepted by the China and being objected. So a new angle has came into this particular dispute, and this is all when the brigade commander level meets from both the sides are going on, and these type of actions are not necessary and will be counterproductive. Now, please remember these locations from north to south for your prelims examination mapping points. Now, on to the page number 8. On the continuation of this particular news, certain other mapping points have also been mentioned. First of all, guys, we will understand this. There is a Karakoram range which lies towards the northern direction. Then, on to the south, there is one more range which is called as Chang Chenmo range. Now, the name Chang Chenmo comes from the Chang Chenmo river, which is the tributary of the other river that is Shyok. Now, in between here, a strategic bridge was built, which was known as Chewang Rinchen Setu, and this particular bridge will boost the connectivity from Darbuk to other regions onto the Daulat Beg Oldie road, such as Shok, Murgo, Daulat Beg Oldie, etc. So, guys, nearly here the bridge is located, and it is into the Chang Chenmo range into the south and Karakoram range onto the north. So please remember this. And now we'll move to the next. Now, friends, here's a news item on page number 4. From this particular news item, we will see an important issue of crop diversification. Now, first of all, if we talk about the state of agriculture in India, then according to the economic survey, our agriculture is cereal centric, where the major thrust of a focus is growing of the cereal crops, and into these cereal two crops, that is paddy and wheat, are the predominant. But for the food security of India, we don't need to only rely on to the cereal. Rather, we need to have a diversified kitty of food, which should include pulses and other edible crops also. Now, guys, into this particular context, if we talk about Haryana and Punjab, then the problem is that they had given much more focus on to the paddy. But if we see about the geographical conditions of growing paddy, then the paddy is suitable into the region which has more than 100 centimeter of rainfall. 100 centimeter is the lower limit. However, if we see average rainfall into the region of Haryana, then there is average rainfall from 40 to 55 centimeters, and therefore the topography does not favors. So in this condition, what happens? The paddy is grown by drawing the groundwater, and due to this particular thing, the groundwater table has become alarmingly low, which is not good for the sustainable agriculture. Therefore, the Haryana government started a scheme, that is Mera Pani Meri Virasat, and under that particular scheme, incentive of rupees 7,000 per acre was given to the farmers if they will switch from paddy to other alternative crops such as maize, cotton, millet, and pulses. Now, if we analyze this particular move, then it is a much needed step on the part of the government, because according to Niti Aayog's Composite Water Management Index, Haryana is among the water stressed states, and Not only Haryana, if we talk onto the global level, then India ranks second last onto the global water quality index. So the quality of water as well as the quantity of water both are very much poor. Now guys, according to certain estimates, by 2020, 21 major cities of India will run out of water. Therefore, growing a crop into the region where the rainfall is not sufficient is not wise. Therefore, crop diversification is much needed step. Now, on page number 4, the issue of wheat stubble burning has been mentioned. Now, guys, as the season of harvest is over, farmers, in order to clear the agricultural waste, are resorting to the stubble burning. Now, as every industry generates some of its waste, the waste of agricultural industry is the stubble. Now, in the process of harvest, large number of stubble is generated. It could be husk, it could be leftovers, it could be threshing waste, etc. And as the first crop is harvested, the time for the sowing of the second crop comes. So therefore, in order to save the time, this entire leftover is simply burned. Now this particular thing causes problem on two front. Number one, due to the burning, farmer loses much needed ingredients or the nutrients such as nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium. Now guys, NPK are the most important nutrients which enhances the fertility and they are lost. Then various beneficial microorganisms such as earthworms are also killed, and over large period of time when this burning is continued, soil degrades and it loses its fertility. Secondly, on the front of other people, much pollution is caused because onto the burning harmful gases such as carbon monoxide, volatile organic compounds, traces of methane, etc., and other large number of gases are released, which are not good for the air quality. And in this particular direction, stubble burning is an offense under the Air Act of 1981, and monetary fines are also being levied into these particular kind of things. But the issue is, why, when there are so much of problems, farmers are still continuing into this particular practice? First of all, there is a problem of attitude, because this particular practice is so much ingrained into the behavior that it will need much time to reform. Second is, there is lack of alternative, as if they will not burn, what to do, because state support is often weak. So guys, what could be the way forward into this particular direction? Now, first of all, we will see certain out of box mechanisms and then we will see the traditional mechanisms. Now, first of all, Sweden has perfected a technology where the stubble can be converted into the energy pellets, and these energy pellets can act as the green coal and can act as the major source of fuel. So guys, wherever the coal is being used, we can use the energy pellets which are made up of stubble. Now, in this particular direction, the process of torrefaction is used, in which the biomass is converted into coal like material, and this green coal leaves no carbon footprint. So every year we are burning so much of coal, so in that place we can burn these green pellets, and every year it can replace 21 million ton of fossil coal. So therefore, India will also meet the target to reduce the pollution which we have taken into the Paris Climate Summit. Therefore, state government should make arrangement to import this technology and to make it available to the farmers. Now we will look into certain traditional measures. Number one, on to the self-help group model, stubble collectors should be given to the farmers so that they can use them into their group and stubble could be collected. Secondly, individual farmers could be given the stubble collectors on rent, and such rent should be reimbursed to the farmers so that rent doesn't becomes an impediment. After that, farmers should be sensitized emotionally or scientifically as what are the harms of the stubble burning. And guys, fourthly, certain penal actions will also be required in order to instill the kind of efficacy of the action. In this particular direction, the government is also making the red pen entries for the people who are burning the stubble. Now, red pen entry means that the revenue records will be given a red marking, and whenever the farmer will go to take the loan, banks will not give the loan if there is a red marking into their records. So these things further can act as a deterrent. Moreover, guys, certain other things such as levying of the fines and challans are also being done, but still the problem has not been dealt with effectiveness. So guys, this was all about this particular news item, and now we'll move to the next. Now, here's an article on page number 4 where the plea for the termination of pregnancy has been rejected by the Bombay High Court. So, we will be seeing certain important concepts here. Now, first of all, in India, whether the abortion is allowed or not. So, guys, it depends on to the condition. Now, there is a Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act 1971, which deals with the issues of abortion. Now, under this particular act, if the pregnancy is up to 12 weeks, then such pregnancy could be terminated by a medical practitioner. However, if a pregnancy is between 12 to 20 weeks, then also it can be terminated by a medical practitioner. But there, at least two registered medical practitioners should give an opinion that if pregnancy is continued, then there will be either the risk to the life of mother or the child which will be born, he will be having such physical and mental abnormalities which will make him seriously handicapped, then the pregnancy up to 20 weeks can also be terminated. But beyond 20 weeks, it is not allowed to terminate the pregnancy. So, friends, what happened here? The mother was having the pregnancy of 24 weeks, so she was not allowed to terminate the pregnancy. Therefore, she approached the Bombay High Court and told the Bombay High Court that the child is having the Down syndrome, therefore, she should be allowed to terminate the pregnancy. Now, the Bombay High Court had rejected the plea, and she said that the mother is pregnant with the twin child, and if one will be terminated, then the other will also be impacted, and therefore he was not given the permission to terminate the pregnancy. Now there could be one more thing, that what exactly is the Down syndrome with which the fetus is infected. Now, friends, in our body, we have a cell, and the cell contains a nucleus, and in the nucleus, there are chromosomes. So, every healthy individual have 23 pairs of chromosomes which are inherited from the mother as well as father. But sometimes what happens, the chromosome number 21 contains an additional chromosome. It could be partial or could be full chromosome. So, actually, the person infected with Down syndrome will be having a 47 chromosome against the 46, and this extra chromosome causes the learning disabilities, developmental disabilities, cognitive disabilities into the children, and lifelong he faces the challenges. So therefore, the Down syndrome is actually a problematic thing. Now, on the parallel plane, if we see the decision which has been given by the Bombay High Court is into the sync of MTP Act of 1971, where the permission to terminate a pregnancy is up to only 20 weeks. But sometimes it causes a problem. So, therefore, government has introduced MTP Amendment Bill 2020. Under this particular bill, certain changes have been made. Now, into the usual circumstances, the limit will be 20 week only, but for certain special circumstances, limit has been extended to 24 week. Now, guys, this extended limit will be given to the vulnerable women such as rape survivors, the victims of incest, or the women if she is differently abled or if is a minor. However, still the advice of registered medical practitioners need to be taken. Moreover, guys, if the child has any substantial deformity or if there is substantial risk to the mother, then the upper limit of 24 weeks have been removed. So that's all. Now we'll move to next. Now, friends, we are into the editorial section, and this particular editorial talks about the freedom of speech mentioned into the article number 19. Now, friends, first of all, obviously, free speech, if it will be absolute, then it will become tyrannical and will not be desirable. Therefore, by the virtue of First Constitutional Amendment Act, Article 19(1), Subclause 2 was added, and by virtue of this particular article, reasonable restriction on free speech and expression was levied. So guys, first of all, free speech is regulated by article 19 itself, and secondly, under section 499 and section number 500 of CRPC, that is criminal procedure code, provisions for defamation has been listed. Now guys, defamation is an attempt to malign or to lower the reputation of a particular person by action of his free speech and expression. Further, defamation could be of two types. It could be the civil defamation as well as it could be the criminal defamation. Now, guys, civil are those where the charges are not proved beyond doubt, whereas in criminal, the charges are proved beyond doubt and it is outright instance of defamation. In criminal defamation, there could be jail as well as there could be monetary compensation, whereas into the civil, there could be the only the monetary compensation as a punishment. So, guys, therefore, section 499 and 500 are the kind of provisions which arrest article number 19. Now, a question comes that why these kind of things are required. So, it is required because as free speech and expression are fundamental for a qualitative life, into the same spirit, right to reputation is also a fundamental condition for a dignified life, and dignified life is guaranteed under article number 21 of the Indian Constitution. And guys, the dignified life will not be possible if a right to reputation is not given. But yes, this is also true that if under the right to reputation, every attempt of a free speech and expression will be curtailed, then it will also lead to injustice. So, guys, a kind of a fine balance is needed to be made between the two. But what is happening is that by applying indiscriminately the laws of defamation, the attempt to free speech and expression is being curtailed. So, guys, in this particular direction, recently Madras High Court had given a judgment and had levied a series of precautions which are needed to be taken before slapping the charges of defamation. It is being done so that the rights of free journalism as well as rights of public dissenters are not curtailed. So friends, let's see what are the directions which has been given by the Madras High Court. First of all, every act of questioning should not be taken as a criticism, and before filing a defamation against any person, state officials should not act without a proper thought. Therefore, a proper thinking and reasoning should be given. Now, guys, secondly, there could be an instances when a public servant is being criticized in his own individual capacity, not as a part of a state. So in that particular type of a cases, a distinction should be made that when a person is being criticized in his own personal capacity and when he is criticized as a part of a state. Thirdly, whenever the state is putting a defamation case, it should give the reasons that how they are being defamed, and after that the public prosecutors should act independently and should scrutinize whether the things which have been said they are actually defaming or not. After that, defamation can only be made for the offenses which deals relates to the official duty of a public servant. Guys, suppose a public servant is in charge with the educational department and he is being criticized for some other action which doesn't relates to the education. So guys, in this particular case, the thing should not be seen as the defamation. After that, there should be a clear content which is directly maligning. Indirect references and such kind of things should not be qualified for the filing of defamation case. So guys, these are certain directions, and as an example you can use wherever there is question with respect to the defamation. Now, friends, a question can come when defamation is creating so many problems, why don't we repeal it? So, I have told you because there is a right to reputation, there is a right to dignity, therefore, some barriers to the free speech are also needed, otherwise, it will become absolute and tyrannical. Now, guys, please remember the Subramaniam Swamy versus Union of India case, because this is the case which upheld the right to defamation as a part of individual dignity. So if a question comes, you can use its reference also. But at the end, always we need to maintain a very clear balance. Otherwise, there will be the crisis on the part of democracy. So guys, this was all about this, and now we'll move to the next. Now, friends, this particular article deals with the two core issues, that is privacy and data protection laws. First of all, the events which are happening right now are not completely new. It has happened in 1920 also. But what is new into the present time is that apart from the health crisis, there is also one force at play, that is the technology. Earlier, the technology was missing. Now, what is happening? This technology is being used to collect the extensive data onto the people's movement, their health, their lifestyle, their choices, everything. And the case in point is the Arogya Setu app, which has been downloaded by more than 90 million people. And in the background, extensive such data is also being collected here also. And such data can pose a various problem onto the right to privacy of the individuals and can have various other repercussions also. Now, going forward with this particular line, the data has already proved to be a source of friction because everybody is accusing WHO that WHO has not shared the data properly with respect to the impact on China when China was grappling with the present problem. And not only this, but there are other geopolitical angles to the data also. For example, the largest companies which accumulate the data are Amazon, it is Facebook, Google, etc. But already it has been established that these corporations sometimes act as the proxy of their own country and might be sharing the data with their government for their own concerns. And in this particular direction, the example of Huawei is very much paramount, which shares large extensive information with the Chinese government. So in this particular respect, these companies have so much data which have the domestic importance, and such domestic data when being shared with some other countries or other governments, there are large number of geopolitical significance. Moreover, guys, moving one step ahead, these companies sometimes become so much dominant and they hold so much clout that they don't even negotiate with the government and put forward their own set of conditions. Moreover, the power of these corporates can be gauged from the example of Cambridge Analytica, where there have been reports that the entire US elections were being manipulated. So, what lesson we learn from this entire episode? That there is the need of greater regulation of data collecting agencies, these search engines, techno savvy companies, all of them. Now, friends, there are different data laws in this particular respect. For example, there is a GDPR for European Union, then there is a Cloud Act of USA, and in India also, there was a BN Shri Krishna committee which suggested that India should also come with such kind of data protection laws, and the draft for such thing has also been prepared. Moreover, apart from them also, recently the Reserve Bank of India talked about the data localization. Data localization means that such data is being collected by the payment gateways, for example, Amazon Pay, Google Pay, and that data is located onto the server which are in countries such as USA and Europe. So RBI said that all such agencies should store the data into the India only. So guys, all these things are nothing but the attempt to control the data. But all these laws are operating into the patches or islands. They are isolated with each other and often they are not connected or interoperable, due to which a large gray area left, and that gray area could be exploited by such data collection firms. So right now we need that a collective framework should be made and response should be given to this problem on to the immediate basis. However, doing such kind of thing will not be that much easy because till now even the United Nation has not been able to frame the ground policies for such kind of regulations. So therefore, all the countries should come together because data is now not only the number but it is very much clearly associated with the issue of human rights. So friends, all these complexities have been provided into the article, and now we'll move to the next. Now, friends, here is an article onto the page number 10 where the ILO had wrote to the Prime Minister with respect to the dilution into the labor laws which has taken place. Now, friends, earlier we had seen that various state governments such as Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, etc., had severely diluted their labor laws such as Factories Act, Industrial Disputes Act, etc., and the immunities which were provided to the laborers have been taken back. In this particular direction, the working hours have been increased from 8 to 12. In some states, the overtime will be paid, whereas certain states are not ready to pay the overtime also. For example, Punjab. Now, these particular things are violative of various ILO conventions, and in this particular direction, the Director General of ILO has requested the Prime Minister to urgently intervene into this particular matter. Now, first of all, a question comes, can the government intervene into this particular thing because the amendments are being made by the states? So, then the answer is yes. Why? Because the labor as a subject has been mentioned into the concurrent list, therefore the intervention can be made. Moreover, if not direct interventions, then reminders could be sent by the central government to the state with respect to upholding the labor laws. Now, one more question comes, that what is the authority of ILO onto the government? So, guys, in this particular respect, India had ratified nearly 47 of the ILO's conventions, and therefore, India is bound that India will take certain actions to uphold these conventions. So, on this particular charge, ILO is intervening. Now, one more question comes, that is question number three. What are some of the conventions which might have been violated by India? Number one and the most important is ILO Convention number 144, which talks about the tripartite agreement. Now, guys, tripartite agreement or approval means that any change should involve three parties. One should be the government, other should be the employer, and the third should be the employee. Now, guys, what has happened in all these kind of changes, government unilaterally had taken the decisions, or if somebody had even been listened, then they have been the employer. For example, consultation is being made by the CII, which is a representative body of employers. Employee has not been given a chance, so therefore ILO Convention 144 of tripartite agreement has been violated. Then after that, ILO Convention number 198, which talks about collective bargain, is also being violated because no bargain space has been given to the employees or the labor unions. So on all these bases, the issue has been made in ILO. So this was all about. Now we'll go to the next. Now, guys, here's a small news. A new type of a fish, that is silver fish, have been found into the Kerala. So, guys, the name of the fish is Puntius sanctus. Sanctus means someone which is sacred, and the name comes from the sacred town of Velankani. Now, guys, if we talk about the Velankani, then it is a coastal town into the Kerala, which is situated onto the Vellayar River. Now, guys, Vellayar River is the distributary of Kaveri. Please remember, it is a distributary, not a tributary. So, guys, this particular fish variety, it is a very small type of fish, and it grows only up to the maximum length of 7 centimeter. Moreover, this particular fish belongs to the Cyprinid family. So that's all which we need to read about this particular thing. So guys, that's all about today's newspaper discussion. I hope you are liking it. Thank you so much.